All right, good afternoon, everyone. Um, Welcome to today's webinar, which is also in collaboration with the International Youth Day 2021 with the theme Transforming Food System, Youth Innovations for Humans and Planetary Health. So you've observed that youths have actually taken the front line in exemplifying leadership and bringing the agricultural space into the limelight in Nigeria and the world at large. And I have with me here today Farmer Samson Ogbole, who is the lead Solace Farm lead at Solace Farmland. Sorry about that. And just to mention, I've had the opportunity to listen to Farmer Samson, and he's an outstanding man in the agricultural space. I followed him on Instagram. So at this moment, we would like to have Farmer Samson to take the keynote remark. Over to you, Mr. Samson.
Okay, hi everyone. Good afternoon. It's a
Good
pleasure to be
afternoon.
here, to be a part of this program, and welcome to this year's food system, our discussion on food system. So, what I would
Yeah.
do is, because of the limited time, I would just look at what food system is, who the youths are, and what innovations we can bring into play. Now, generally speaking, I always tell people that looking at the world where we are right now, would you say that we are food sufficient as we are right now? Because look at around you, do you have people that are trying to get food? Do you have people who are at the moment not food sufficient? Do you have people who are to afford what they want or even can afford it but cannot get what they want every time they want it? Now, if the answer is yes, we have people who are at the moment not food sufficient. The question then becomes, by the year 2050, what is going to happen when the world population would have moved from about 7 billion to 9 billion, or in the Nigerian context, from about 200 million to over 450 million? Because we understand that the factors for food production would still remain the same. The factors talking about the size of land will not increase magically. The amount of water we have would not increase. The amount of air we have would not increase. Yet, the amount of mouths that needs to be fed would increase. And unfortunately, following the trend over the past decade, the number of hands that are in agriculture would also reduce. Yet, the mouths to be fed are increasing. So the question then becomes, what can be done to ensure that in the future we are still food sufficient? So first, I will start by looking at what is food systems, because if we are going to understand how to solve or how to work towards solving the problem, we need to understand what are the systems in place as it is. Now, so when we say food system, going back to our basic primary school knowledge in biology, where they said there is a cell, there are tissues, there are organs, and there are systems. And of course, the systems together forms the body. So the body in totality is nutrition, feeding. But we have systems that are in place that ensures that the food on the farm can get to our table. So the first part of the system is production. So under production, we have various processes from input supplier to land preparation, good agricultural practice, and so on and so forth. All of that falls under production. Then the next thing is processing, because for most of the foods that we consume, we do not eat them the way they are harvested from the farm. So there is a system around processing. Then the next is distribution, because where the foods are produced and where they are processed is not where they are consumed. So there is a method of distribution that is in place. So under the system of distribution, we have things like transportation, that's the logistics, we have storage, we have packaging, we have branding, we have marketing. All of these things plays a key role in distribution. And finally, there is consumption. How is the food consumed? How is it taken in? What quantity is needed per time in an area, and all of that. Now, having understood what makes up the food system, it's also important I talk about the the evolutions of the food system. So there is the traditional food system that existed in the past. If we go back to the 1950s, the 1940s, especially in Nigeria, you realize that we had a traditional food system where most of the time where foods were produced is where they were consumed, with just a little traveling less than 40, 50 kilometers from where they were produced. Then, and the kind of equipment that were used were the crude equipment. So they had things like hose, they had things like cutlass. They use their eyes to determine, okay, does this look healthy or not healthy? When it comes to breeding, they had things like positive selection from the part of the farmer. Oh, this plant gave me the characteristics that I like. Let me save the seed for the future so that I can replicate the same success. Oh, how do I know it is rainy season? Let me see the way the sun is shining, the way the moon is moving to determine season. This was the traditional. Then we have the next part, which is the modern form of the food system, which is what is existent in the very developed nations. Then there is the third part of this system, which is what we call the intermediate system. And this is where I now bring in the aspect of the youth, because I always say, yes, as a nation, our government has done a lot around trying to advertise agriculture to people, which is good, but it is not the right way to go. And the reason I say that is you realize that before, if we go back to the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the sector that was the top notch or at the top was agriculture. Then we had oil and gas. But when oil and gas came in, there was no advertisement in place to get people to go into oil and gas. Rather, when people saw that those that were in oil and gas were living good life, automatically people started subscribing to oil and gas. Same thing happened in the banking sector, is happening in the entertainment sector, in our sports and all of that. Reason being that people are realizing that the people in this area are making a decent life. Now, same way, if we are going to bring in the youths into this space, then it is pertinent that those in the system already must be able to afford a decent or good life. And for that to happen, we need to look at which part of this system can accelerate the life that we are looking at or we are looking for. How do I mean? So, do we want to ensure that as a country, we are placing our focus on production? Because if we want to focus on production, can we ensure that with production, we can ensure a decent lifestyle for those who are in that production area or that production cycle? Because this is important to understand that if you are going to get the innovative minds of the youth into this space, then those in that space must be able to have a decent life that would make somebody that is innovative to think maybe agriculture is the way to go, maybe farming is the way to go. So we need to look at in which of these areas, production, process, distribution, consumption, should we focus on first, so that with little effort we can maximize results. So by that I mean, what tools do we need to bring in? And for us to answer this question, we need to, as a nation, ask ourselves, what do we want to use agriculture for? Because you see, agriculture is a tool. Agriculture is not an end in itself. So when we say it is a tool, it means it's like having a screwdriver. The screwdriver is not an end in itself, but rather a screwdriver's importance is in the kind of nut it can either open or close. But if I do not have nuts to open or close, the screwdriver becomes an asset that is not worth it at that point. So it becomes basically liability. Same way, we need to understand what can we use agriculture for. Now, there are three major things we can use agriculture as a whole for. And unfortunately, these three things do not overlap. But success in one of these three can be so much that it comes across as though you are successful in the three. But we can only be successful in one per time, but success in one shows up or expresses itself in the other two. So the first is we can decide to use agriculture as a source of food security. to ensure food security. So that is number one. We can use agriculture as a tool for food security. Number two, we can use agriculture as a tool for employment, where you just give people jobs, decent jobs, just keep giving out jobs. Option three is we can use agriculture as a tool for income. And it's important. I'll give you an example. In IITA Ibadan, there is a slogan I'm sure some of us have heard, where you would hear things like, if you want to feed the people, grow cassava. If you want to make money, grow yam. Interpretation: there is a crop for feeding, there is a crop for money. So if I want to make money and I go and pick a crop that is meant for feeding, I will not achieve the purpose of the money I want to make. Don't get me wrong, I am not saying those in cassava cannot make money, but when we compare them with those in yam that are doing equal scale and all, you realize that the wealth generated from yam is more than the wealth you can generate from cassava. Now, when we have decided as a nation what is our ultimate goal, do we want to ensure food security, or do we want to create these systems? In which of these systems, based on our own vision, should we focus on? Then, in looking at the system, we now look at what is in the modern world, what is available in the very civilized nations, and what do we have right now. Now, based on what we have right now that is in our tradition, that's the traditional farming, and we look at what is in the modern world, then we can build our own intermediate system. Because we cannot just jump to, oh, we want to start using sensors and all of that, remembering the fact that majority of our farmers are not literate. But we can now start domesticating what we have in the modern world in our own environment by using what I call the ABC. The people that can drive these are youth, because they are tech savvy enough to understand what exists in the modern world, but they have gone through our school system to understand what happens in the traditional. So from where they came out from to what they are seeing, now we can build an equitable system to ensure that we are building a system that works for us as a nation, rather than just importing a system that works for somebody else in another part of the world. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Farmer Samagole. I really took a lot from that, especially for the fact that you said that agriculture is not just what you want to make from it; it's not the end itself. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on board. At this point, I'd like to introduce Tumike, who will continue with the panelists. We have different panelists ready for you today, and we hope that as we continue the session, you enjoy yourself and you learn from it. Thank you very much. Tumike, over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. So the first person on our panel is Atinuke Lebile, the CEO of Cattle Foods. She's an agri-business specialist in value chain consultant. She's a product development specialist for startups and a Mandela Washington Fellow. You're welcome, Ma. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much, Sharika.
And next person is going to be Toib Abdul Salam, the CEO of Farm Ignite. You're welcome, Mr. Toib.
Thank you for having me.
And then the next person on our panel would be Mr. Baba Jide. Mr. Baba Jide is the co-founder of Eco22.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Mr. Baba Jide. Okay, so the first for questions I have for the panelists is in a few words, can you tell us about your innovation in agriculture? I know that you are all youths in agriculture, in the agricultural sector. So can you tell us what innovation in the agricultural sector means to you? So let's start with Ms. Latinke.
All right. Thank you, Tumike, and good to have everyone here. Okay, so in agricultural space, if we talk about innovation, innovation has to do with a lot of things, and it has to do with the sector that you are in agriculture, because everyone has one value chain or the other. So talking from my own perspective and from the value chain I'm in manufacturing processing. Innovation in processing is you trying to do something that has never been in existence, let's say in food production. But if you look at our crops and all the food that we have, it's like something that is already in existence. People know yam, people know gari, people know cassava and every other thing. But for us in cattle food, one of the major innovation that we've actually brought into cattle food is we believe in product development, and that is what actually built our custard. Everybody know that custard is from cornstarch, right? So for us in cattle food, we are the first company in Nigeria, even in Africa, to commercialize cassava-based custard.
Yeah.
So now you can have your custard from cassava. So our custard is not being called custard, right? It's called custard. Yeah, from cassava, custard, and it's in several varieties: your strawberry, your banana flavor, your vanilla flavor. And why do we come up with custard? I will come up with custard because looking at raw material for custard, it is cornstarch, right? And in Nigeria, we don't have a single company in Nigeria that makes cornstarch. And that is why we have a lot of adulterated custard in markets. I'm not mentioning names now, but and that is why we need people to believe what they eat and to know what they eat. And looking at the problem with maize importation, and also a lot of companies are on maize. You have the food company, you have the animal feed company, you have a lot of companies that are using maize. So there's a lot of competition, a lot of struggling for maize, and because of the problem of aflatoxin in maize. So we need to come up with something that can also play in that space. So that was
Okay.
why we came up with custard in cattle foods.
Okay, well, that's excellent. Thank you very much, ma'am. Mr. Toyib, Mr. Toyib, can you tell us what innovation means to you as a youth contributing to agriculture?
Yeah, thank you, Tumike, for having me. And I welcome all the other panelists. It's great to be here today. So for us at Farm Ignite, and for me personally, innovation means bringing something new to the market and also improving on existing solutions that are currently in the market. And for us at Farm Ignite, we are using technological drive to ensure that we give people access both in Nigeria and diaspora to connect to farms here in Nigeria and monitor their farms on their mobile phones, which has never been done majorly in Nigeria. What we have seen is that there's lots of agricultural transition interest from working professionals both in Nigeria and diaspora. And many of them are looking to transition into this agricultural space. However, they are finding it difficult because they lack access to the right knowledge or don't have adequate time because of their 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. jobs. And in this regard, they are looking for a situation whereby they can also earn passive income and also own farms in Nigeria. So what we did is to use technology as a middle ground for them to connect to farms, to start their own personal farms, connect to resources like farmlands and the likes, and also connect to the right knowledge and expertise to help them manage the process of these farms to the market stage. And for us, innovation is bringing out the dynamism that is already existing in the market and infusing technology to ensure that we are able to solve the problems for these working professionals in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Toyib Absalam. Mr. Babajide, over to you now. So let's know what innovation means to you as a youth in that culture. Your mic is on mute. Can you kindly unmute your mic?
I mean, I've said a lot of things already. I realize I'm muted. So I said, yeah, Atinuke
Sorry.
and Toyiba has really done fantastic job talking about what innovation
Okay.
means to them and to their work. And so I was thinking, hey, hope what we are doing is innovative enough, right? At Ekututu. And yeah, so what innovation means to us is that for businesses that play in the agricultural value chain, right, for food, there is need for storage, there's need for preservation. And I mean, you agree with me that cold storage is not new. I mean, since I was born, I've always known cold storage. I've always seen cold rooms. I've always seen refrigerators and the likes. But then it will shock you to know that a lot of people, particularly businesses in rural areas, even in urban areas, still do not have access to cold storage in a very affordable way. And at the end of the day, most of their efforts like goes to waste. I mean, when you have 40 to 45 or 50% of your harvest, especially for perishable items, uh, getting to waste and that you're unable to capture monetary value from them. I mean, it's just a matter of time before you give up on that business and go look for something else to do. And in a world where we are saying we need to even bring more people into this agriculture space, that means we need to encourage the ones that are currently playing. And that's the gap that we saw at Ecotutu. The need for cold storage for businesses across the value chain, right from the point of production till it gets to the table of final consumers. And we are enabling businesses, right, across this path in a way that is very much accessible and in a way that is very much affordable. So they don't need to bother themselves about all the technology side. They don't need to have all the big funds for them to be able to have access to cold storage. So being able to democratize that access, right, for everyone, for every businesses in the food chain that needs it. I mean, that's what innovation really means for us. And at the end of the day, the more we are able to enable them, the more we're able to help them capture as much value as possible from their produce, the more money they're able to make, and the better livelihood for them, and the better for everyone too across the chain. So that's it.
These are very beautiful innovations, different, very different but beautiful. Mr. Tinker mentioned producing different foods, the food different from the common foods that we know, producing something else from yam, using custard. Mr. Toib mentioned innovation based on having more people invest in agriculture, having more people do agriculture, and you mentioned storage facilities. So I'll move on to the next question, which is for Mr. Toib. With your experience, do you think there has been a shift in the perceptions around the way young people view the agricultural sector?
Yeah, for me, it's there's been a huge difference in the perception of youth in agriculture. Now, what do we see over the past couple of years? We've seen a reduction in the cost of internet tariffs by network communicators or network holders. There's been a reduction, about 30% reduction, according to the Center for Technical Agriculture and Rural Corporation's report. And what have we seen also? We've also seen an increase, a 15% increase in the use of mobile phones over the past couple of decades. Now, what did this tell us? This tells us that youths are more tech inclined, they are more technological driven, and in this regard, they are playing more role in the use of technology to enhance agriculture. Like you can see, it's a dynamic panel session with different youths. What Bajide is doing using solar energy to, to power cold storage facilities. Atinuke creating a solution out of creating value out of cornstarch and the likes. These are also used doing great stuff. And this is not what you would see in the past couple of decades, like in about the 2000 and 2004 period of time. I'm not sure you would have noticed so many youths thrive in agriculture at the time. So, and what we also looked at is there are different aspects of the value chain that youths are trying to play in, and they are bringing their dynamism from. Some are playing in value addition, some are simply playing in the market access solution space, some are playing in information and advisory service. We've seen a lot of advisory service solutions in terms of providing adequate providing adequate information on good agronomic practices to smallholder farmers to improve their yield and also improve the crop that they grow. That is growing growing more with less in that regard. So we've seen a lot of information and advice service in that regard. We've also seen a lot of market access, connecting farmers to to direct consumers in this regard. We've seen a lot of youth coming to play to start e-commerce platforms where they aggregate products from farmers and sell to final consumers or sell to off-takers in this regard. So the role of youth in agriculture has really shifted. The perception has really shifted in this regard. And what is also Farm Ignite doing in also gearing youth towards agriculture? One of our main drive and one of our main impact is also to empower youth with job opportunities and also to give them that ability to earn and live a sustainable lives for them and their families. So our solution simply connects working professionals from diaspora and Nigeria here to farms, right? So who work those farms? It's majorly youth in rural communities. What we noticed in these rural communities is that there are lots of rural-urban migration in these rural communities. And what are they migrating for? They are migrating for green pastures to go out there and go and get white-collar jobs, which is also in competition with the elite youth in the cities and in the metropolitan cities. So what we did is to go to rural communities and create job opportunities in these rural communities by starting farms in these rural communities with investment from working professionals both abroad and in Nigeria here. This provides local job for youth in agriculture in these rural communities, and at that time they're able to stay back in their rural communities because there's enough job for them to have and to earn more money to live a sustainable life. So we've had series of cases, and one of our success stories, like I used to mention, is a guy called Asare Kwame, who migrated from Ghana to Nigeria here. He's a youth. He got married in a local community, in a Leworile community in Ogun State, to a Nigerian, and he found it difficult to feed his family because there was no job. He was thinking about going to the city as well, leaving those rural communities to go to the city to get jobs when our organization intervened in that community. We went there, we organized trainings, and from that trainings, we started our farms in that regard. We had lots of investment from diaspora and Nigeria for those who want to start their farms and get it managed by Nigerians here. So we started the farm in Leworile community then, and Kwame was able to get a job on our farm, and he worked the farm to feed his family. He didn't need to migrate anymore to the urban city where you have to struggle for or compete for job with elite youth and the likes. Now, Kwame has migrated back to Ghana with his family, living happily and sustainably now because he had the capacity to feed his family here in Nigeria to the extent that he garnered so much money and he was able to travel back to his country to start a better or to live a better life in that regard. So for us, we've seen more youth drive in agriculture, and it's just going up from here. Yeah, thank you.
So thank you very much, Toyi. The next question is the there is an order to lower the African and accelerate participation. How can you involve agriculture and make both impact? Sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Sumike. I mean, there have been a lot of reports, a lot of case studies, a lot of research, majorly centered around why we need more people in agriculture and why young people need to take up that call. And going by what Samson said earlier in his keynote address, that there are different layers of agriculture. I mean, there are parts where you want to talk about just feeding yourself and your family, parts where you want to make money, and other layers to also empower people, right? Agriculture in itself, I mean, when we start looking at it holistically, maybe it gives us a better perspective as to the enormous opportunity that lies in that sector, right? For people to understand that agriculture goes beyond tilling the soil, goes beyond production, that there are different opportunities that are bound across the value chain. I mean, look at Atinuke doing processing, value addition, and the likes for produce like maize, right? someone takes care of production, and that person takes care of distribution, and that person takes care of processing, marketing, until it gets to table. Then maybe some people take care of the consumption, right? So you pay for it to consume. So for young people to look across the different value chain that exists. I mean, for someone like me, typically, maybe when I was in my university, I mean, I never thought I did do anything close to agriculture, right? And so, I mean, I never see myself, because at the time, maybe my understanding of agriculture is that you have to be producing something. You have to be planting tomatoes, or you have to be planting cassava, or you have to be processing it to gari and the like. So, I mean, I wasn't thinking in all of that like at all. But one way or the other, I saw a gap, which is interestingly, I even got into that space, not even from the agricultural perspective. I got into that space from the environment perspective. Um, Seeing how much food that gets to waste. I mean, that was the first trigger, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, seeing a lot of tomatoes on landfills, drainages. The environmental side of me was looking at the amount of methane gas that would emit into the environment. And that is just in a particular spot, right? And then you have these across multiple spots, multiple communities, multiple states and regions in developing countries all over the world. And so I now, of course, I plunged further to really understand what the issue is. And so I saw an economic opportunity in that light. So whilst I want to solve environmental problem of cutting the amount of food that gets to waste, right, that pollutes the environment, that releases methane gas and all those things, I at the same time saw how much economic loss that we are incurring on a regular basis, how much food that we are losing, and to a growing population that needs more food to stay healthy, not just to survive. And that was the opportunity I saw, right? And I bring together a team of like minds like myself, trying to understand what the real problem is, and for us to better position on where we can address and solve that problem. So I think we've been saying this for a long time, right? It starts with the mindset. Starts with the mindset.
Okay.
Mindset, then empowerment, knowledge. I mean, when you understand that it's a value chain thing, and there are different legs of it where you can position yourself. I mean, that's like the starting point. When you've identified that, when you've realized that, then you can now look at, okay, which area do I want to focus, right? Do I want to start with marketing? Do I want to start with distribution? Just like Ecotutu is taking care of storage and preservation, especially for perishable items that requires cold storage, right? And I'll tell you that the cold storage market in itself is very huge. I mean, the plan is that we want to dominate as much of it as we can, but we definitely cannot dominate everything. I mean, for you to understand how huge that particular spot is across the value chain. Then now think about other legs of it: production, packaging, like you said, marketing, distribution, and the like. So, I mean, it is straightforward. Having that mindset shift to say, okay, I really want to really understand what is happening across this chain. I mean, we're even still talking about crops. What about livestock? I mean, that's another leg of it. What about seafood? That's another leg of it. I mean, because we're talking about food systems here, which also fits under the agriculture pillar, right? I mean, so starts with the mindset shift, then also knowledge, understanding. I didn't do agriculture while I was in school. Yeah, a bit of it, because I went to the School of Technology, so you had to do a bit of, just a little element of going to farm, right? But I I had a mindset shift. I saw an opportunity in that area to do something for the environment and also to improve economic value. And I tried to improve myself to even to better understand the challenges and how I can better address it. And I think it starts from there for anyone that wants to really play a part in this whole thing.
Okay. So that you said to make impact, like, has to have a knowledge of culture. Am I right?
Yeah, of course, mindset shift, then knowledge is important. I mean, from knowledge, you now realize that, I mean, this is what I can get out of this. These are values I can create away from the age-long way that we grew up with, right? Of, yeah, he's a farmer, she's a farmer. He has to go to the farm with hoe and cutlass, till the soil, plant seed, at the end of the season, harvest and sell, right? I mean, we grew up with, when we did agriculture, then learning subsistence agriculture, the commercial agriculture now. I mean, those are, and then mechanized agriculture. Like everything just has to be about the soil, right? But now understand that you don't even, sometimes maybe where you push on doesn't might not have anything to even do with the soil. I mean, might be in the office like at Nuken and be, actually in the AC while packaging your cash card and be making your cool money while you're adding value, right? So that's it.
Okay, thank you. So my question: all value chain, the transformation system, and global.
Okay, so sorry, I didn't really get the question because the network was freezing.
All right, okay, let me come again. How does youth inclusion affect the transformation, both
Okay, so if I can get the
nationally?
question. So how does the youth involvement in the cultural value chain affect the food system, right? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Babaji, they don't be deceived that I'm in the office receiving AC packaging. Don't be deceived, right? Because I seen the fine face today. Okay, so now youth involvement is actually very important because just like what Samson said during the keynote, I talked about the increase in population of people, but there's no increase in the land, there's no increase in air, there's no increase in water, but there's an increase in people and the number of mouths that we need to feed, right? And the more the increase, as people are growing, the more we have more youth in the value chain. The more we have more youth in Nigeria, don't let me use the word value chain now. The more we have more youth globally. And so for the fact that we have a lot of youths, as he also said, let me refer to what he also said. He said, definitely the number of people that will go into agriculture will going to reduce. That especially the old ones, our olden father, because 60% of what we consume right now is being produced by the small older farmers, which are the older farmers. Don't let me use old farmers, the older farmers. And now we need more youth in the food production. We need more youth to come into picture. Now we have a lot of youth that are trying to come in and say, oh, what can I do in agriculture? But I also say that if you're coming into agriculture, don't just think about the primary production. There are a lot of value chain that youth can actually get involved in that without them, agriculture is still not agriculture or it's not agribusiness. So we need more youth to come into the value chain. We need more youth in logistics. We need more youth in storage, just like what Babajide is doing. We need more youth in processing. We need more youth in marketing. We need more youth in quality control. Quality control is one of the aspects of agriculture that people are not really put more strength into. So there are lots of value chain that youths can come into that can actually give agriculture or make the food system more strengthened, because once the food system is strengthened, then maybe we will not be talking about food security. But at the moment, we cannot talk about food security because we don't even have, we that are even existing right now, we don't have enough to eat. Even if we are eating, then are we eating more nutritious food? Because nutrition has to do with the food system. It's not just about what we eat or what's being cultivated or what will be stored. Nutrition is also very important when it comes to food system. So we need more youth also to come into the gap of addressing malnutrition using food. Just like I'll still come back to what cattle food is doing, because that is what I know right now. One of our core focus in cattle food is we want people, no matter the size of your pockets, no matter what you earn, even if you're at the bottom of the pyramid, to have access to affordable, nutritious food. And that is what we also want people to do. So don't just go into primary cultivation, come into the food space, come into the marketing space, come into technology space. We need a lot of people in tech. I'm very glad now that we have youth coming into agri-tech, and we need to find a way of even bringing more innovation into agri-tech. Like, I love what Babajide is doing, like the cold storage system. Like, that is one. Okay, let me share a little bit of my story. That is one of the things that actually brought me into agriculture, to reduce the post-harvest loss of vegetables and fruits. When I started, this was just a motivation around going to a certain market in the Mado, Oje market, and see the waste of fruit and vegetables. Like, it was so annoying. So, and I was like, okay, what can we do? so seeing what EcoTutu is doing about that storage system for vegetables is something that is actually very applaudable. So we need more youth in that space because he cannot do it alone, right? So we need more youth in that space. So youth involvement is actually very important because the youth are growing every day. We are more exposed to innovations every day. We are more exposed to knowledge every day. So we need to bring those knowledge, those innovations that we have into the agricultural food system. So that's the production, the processing, the logistics, then the nutrition space too. We need a lot of youth in that aspect.
All right. Okay. Um, vitamin A and vitamin. Am I correct? It is fortified vitamin A. Yeah. So that is
Your
one.
network is actually frozen. So it's our food products are biofortified. So it is different from fortified. It is biofortified. So let me quickly explain that. So biofortification is a natural way of fortifying food, just like the way you have your carrots. Your carrots is biofortified with vitamin A from inception, from the growing, and that is why your carrot is orange. You have purple carrots, you have white carrots. So the normal general carrot that we know is the orange carrot. So it is
Okay.
biofortified with vitamin A. So just like that, we have in our cassava. So you have your yellow cassava right now, which is biofortified. You have your orange potato, that's orange sweet potato. That is also biofortified. You have your orange maize. So we work around those crops to give you nutritious food. So we don't just give
Oh,
you your normal traditional food. So we give you like adding value to tradition actually. Yeah.
right. I already mentioned that going to their of foods, you could also go into logistics or check other sources. I have a question for everybody. Um, Challenge you faced when you started as an agriculture. How did you overcome that with Mr. Babaji?
Okay. I mean, they say when you have challenges, maybe it makes you believe you're on the right path, right? I mean, starting out, it's been a journey, right? So let me just pinpoint on the two major challenges that we faced and that we try to innovate around. So the first is the cultural attachment of people that we set to enable with our solutions. I mean, the being used to doing something the particular way for a very long time, and then you thinking you have this amazing technology to help them solve the problem. And so getting to the field, you realize a different ball game. I mean, how do you relate with someone uh, that most of our produce are getting bad? I mean, you can see it. She can see it as well. And you're saying, do you know that if you have access to cold storage, you can preserve this thing for so and so weeks, and then you don't have to rush up to sell it, and then you can make times this and that on your revenue and profit. I mean, on the surface, you think that would make sense straight away, right? And then you now get a response like, well, what do you want to do to the produce? Do you want to inject it? How do you want to stop it from growing? How do you want to stop it from ripening? God created it in this way that we harvest it, it ripes, then when it gets to a point, it decays, and then we go again, right? And that it is what God, my creator, said or says I will make from this harvest batch. That is what I will make. And maybe if I don't make as much as I'll make now, that's fine. I know the next one I'll make up for my loss. How do you want to convince that kind of person, right? To say cold storage will help them improve their businesses and the like. And so that was the starting point. We realized that a lot of education still needs to go into that space. You can't blame them. They are used to harvest, keep, middleman comes, take off from them, go and sell, come back, pay them, and the cycle continues. Whatever they come back to pay them, they collect, right? most of the products they've gone to waste too. So we're able to sell only 20% or 30%. This is what we make from it. Take your part, I take my part. Everyone goes. Next season, they go again, right? Because they've worked with the middlemen for so long that they now trust them. So whatever they want them to do, whatever they ask them to do, they believe that makes more sense than you coming from nowhere and saying you have this amazing technology to help them do that. So we realize a lot of education needs to go into it, a lot of trust building needs to happen. We don't have that much time. We don't have that much resources. We need to move fast. And so that's why that sort of help us in changing our target market a bit, right? I mean, we need to now focus on the segment of the market that understands the value of this, of what we are doing, and that can pay for it from the get-go, whilst we now work with other stakeholders to keep educating the market, especially in the remote and rural areas, right? So that was the first challenge we had, and that was how we were able to navigate through it. I mean, we realized that we can't convert ourselves to an education company that now start training people or start advocating for why coaching is important for your business. So we tweaked the customer segment a bit, so the segment that understands the value of coaching for their business and are willing and able to pay for it, whilst we now work with them and other stakeholders to keep educating the market. So that's the first. Then second one is about cost, right? You agree with me that cold storage is not new. I mean, cold storage has been in existence since I was born, I've always known cold storage. I've always known cold rooms, right, where we go buy frozen food and the likes. But you ask again that why people are saying cold storage is a problem. Why are they not using it? It's been around for too long now. What is the matter? Then we identify two issues with that. One, it is energy dependence. I mean, it's a very large extent. I mean, you need consistent power for you to keep your cold storage facility going. Maybe few hours break could damage millions of whatever items you've stored in that part. So energy is a very important component. And even for major lightning activities, to even get lighting, sometimes electricity is even still a challenge, even in urban areas, right? Not to now talk of rural and peri-urban areas where most of these foods are being produced. So electricity, lack of stable electricity is a challenge. Then the second one is the cost. So we talk about, yes, issue of electricity has been addressed. You can buy generator, maybe diesel or PMS generator. The cost of running that guy is not cheap, right? And so it is only those that maybe are running at a maybe medium to large scale level that can afford that, all of those processes in place for them to run their business. I mean, those ones have been doing it for years. Even though they complain to themselves, but they still get to do it and make their money. But how about those that are producing but they cannot afford stuff like that or do not have access to solutions like that? And that's where EcoTools now say, okay, we can come up with a solution that could help address. You don't have to buy off if you don't have the money, right? We now introduce the subscription model, which we call the pay as you store, right? For the EcoTools hub. So all you have to do is, so once you identify a need in a particular cluster, market or farm cluster, we set up our EcoTools hub, which is solar powered. Of course, it's not cheap, which we set up in that cluster. So for farmers, aggregators, retailers that have items to store, all they just need to do is bring their produce to that cluster and store. And they only pay when they have produce to store, right? So meaning that you don't have to worry about what the technology looks like. You don't have to worry about incurring a lot of funds for you to be able to deploy that. You only bring your produce when you have to store, and you only pay when you have produce to store. That makes a lot of sense, right? But we still understand that, yes, like I said, the very rural customers, a bit of experience needs to go into them. But we now focus on the aggregators that already understand the value in the chain and are a bit more enlightened to know the impact of what coaching means for their business. And that's where that lies. Then the other segment is for the retail businesses, especially in urban areas like Lagos. You want to distribute perishable items on the go. Yes, traffic is there all over Lagos. It's a constant thing. How do you ensure you move your perishable item from your store to the doorstep of your consumer without the product itself losing some of its features, without it losing its quality as it's being packaged? And that was why we now launched the EcoTools Fresh Box, which enables express delivery, right? And so we have a proprietary ICL that you can put in the cold box, so you don't need electricity on the go for you to chill the box and move your cold sensitive items on the go. I mean, This is now EcoTutu trying to further democratize access for businesses across different legs of the operation points of the value chain, ensuring that they have access to cold storage. I mean, typically before now, many of them are using ice blocks, right? You put ice block in a box, or you put ice block in a bag, and before you know it, ice block, water is all over the place. You could mess up with, or most time messes up with the item that you want to distribute. And Echo2 has created a solution for that. I mean, no water means you have a reusable ICL packs. You put in your code box, you deliver your item, you get back, get it out of the box, refreeze it again, you continue the cycle again and again. And it's very much affordable, very, very affordable. I mean, we've seen a lot of adoption from small businesses, especially in the value addition side of agri-food. So the smoothie makers, the parfait makers, the seafood distributors, the ice cream distributors, and all of those legs, even for perishables like veggies and the likes. Yeah, so challenge again the cultural element of it for people that have been used to age-long way of doing things, and we have to tweak the customer segment a bit to work with people that already have an understanding of the space, whilst we work with them to further educate the market. I mean, the better everyone understands the value, the better for everyone, the better for our businesses too, because adoption will be faster. And secondly, speaks to costs, right? Access because of capital intensity or cost of acquisition, we've been able to democratize us through our different models, the pay as you store option, and then the smaller cold storage models for businesses that they are able to afford from the get-go.
Wow, that's nice. First challenge you made, traditional farmer, they say to ripen oil is to spoil. Then help me. It's quite serious. Sometimes
I know, right?
we are doing things, we just want to. But it's nice that Equity has come up with to get the trust and these people, this method. So next,
Yep.
Toyib Absalam, the challenge and how you overcame the.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. It's it's a wonderful question indeed. Considering the fact that we are an agri-tech company and we are looking at diaspora working professionals and working professionals in Nigeria to start up farms, to invest in agriculture in rural communities. One of the challenges we faced at the time was brand trust, because especially from guys in abroad, we've seen lots of Nigerian youth activities as regards internet fraud. So it was a challenge penetrating into the global market to put our brand out there, because the trust in Nigerians and Nigerian organizations or companies is quite on the low side. So we are always, majority of our youths has tarnished that image. So we had to build that brand trust from the scratch. And one way we did that was to partner with organizations that had global reach. At the time, we partnered with European Union, Center for Technical Agriculture and Rural Corporations, CTA, which helped us gain that global brand trust. Our affiliation with CTA certifies that we are a genuine company that is looking to provide genuine services to working professionals in diaspora that want to own farms here in Nigeria. So in that regard, once they see our affiliation with CTA, they understand that our brand is genuine, and CTA has, for CTA to be in partnership with us, they have done their due diligence, and in that regard, yeah. So we're able to overcome that brand trust in that manner. Coming back to the local context, one of the problems, challenges we also faced was enabling environment. And you would agree with me, not only our own business face lack of enabling environment, I'm sure majority of the businesses and the youth here also are facing the same problems. But there's no time to discuss about all the challenges, I guess. So we're going down to the rural community. We understood that we want to provide services to those in diaspora or those in urban and metropolitan cities, right? So we need to communicate from rural areas to those in urban and metropolitan cities, especially those outside Nigeria. So there was not so much infrastructure in terms of communication, good communication network in these rural communities for us to pass information directly to those in diaspora. So it was a challenge at that stage that, okay, how do we as an agri-tech company that has to do with, connecting to the internet, connecting to cloud, to access information or to pass information to those who are far away directly from the farm, how is that going to be possible? So it became a challenge. But at the end of the day, we made do with what we had. We had to improvise. So we send information directly from the farm via phone calls directly to the farm and from the farm to our office here in Lagos. Then the information is processed and passed from the office in Lagos here to wherever we want to disseminate the information, because the network is better, right, in the metropolitan city in Lagos. So we had to break down that information process, and it's really hampered our fluid process that we are putting in place at the time, because our aim is to provide that full technological drive to send message directly to the farm and from the farm for those of our users who have farms in rural communities and want to monitor their farms in rural communities. But we found a way across that in that regard. Another thing I would like to mention as regards enabling environment would be lack of good access to roads. When you are working in rural communities, you understand that you have to transport, or you have to move your produce from one community or from that community down to the market, and lack of good roads, hampers the effectiveness of that in that regard. And for us, using that means also hampers some of the problems Wajide is looking to solve is the storage facility problems. In the course of transitioning produce from the farm down to the market in that regard. Now, considering the fact that the logistics chain is broken in rural communities down to the market, now, transporting goods on a bad road in that regard, there are lots of things that could occur, flat tires, lots of damages that could occur to the car, and this in turn affects the produce you're trying to transport, right? So we lose some of the produce through the cost of transportation, through the cost of that lack of good infrastructural road infrastructure. So in a nutshell, an enabling environment is really going to help also put things in place for us. And for us, one of our main core is bringing funds from diaspora down to Nigeria rural communities. That's one of our main core. So we want to gear working professionals who are working outside Nigeria, who are in diaspora, to start their own personal farms here in Nigeria, thereby empowering rural youth, right? And we are doing this with technology. So one of the things that we require in this regard is a very favorable policy in terms of forex exchange. Now, in this regard, you understand that forex exchange right now, the CBN and anything that has to do with forex now is in loggerheads. I think they've banned all forex trading platform. However, we are not affected at the moment, but we still have to be on the lookout to see how things are going to play out in the long run, to understand how that's going to affect our business going forward. But at the moment, we are not affected to transact in forex, to receive and make payments in forex, because majority of our users are in diaspora. They are in different continents in the world. So for them to now come down and start their farms here, we have questions like, how do I get my funds out of Nigeria, because of, you understand, the forex policies that has been currently put in place. But for us, we have worked out a very beautiful solution and partnership with Flutterwave, which helps us transact effectively in that regard. So for us, these are majorly the three challenges we face: the brand trust, enabling environment, and the logistics, broken logistics in this regard. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Babajide mentioned, you also mentioned trust. To evolve in any aspect, so we need to trust. So, Miss, what were your challenges How did you overcome them?
First, I apologize for the network issues. It's actually a network issue. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so really, starting off in agriculture, it's very challenging for me when I started. Because when I started, it was like not a lot of female in agriculture, so woman resource was actually a very big deal for me at that time. Because you know when you see a small girl not trying to do something, I always have issues with men working with me because they always want to see like what's this small girl doing and that kind of thing. These gender bias issues. But at the same time, you know, when you understood what you want to do and how you want to do it, then you don't allow those things to affect you. But when it's come to the production and what we do in cattle food, so one of the major challenges we had was introducing bio-fortified foods to people. Because you know when you're already used to the normal traditional food that you have, it's like seeing your okay. Let me use fufu as an example. You have a white fufu, you already know white fufu, and someone now coming to introduce a yellow fufu to you. How will you feel? Like, what is this? Ah, you know that kind of thing. So introducing biofortified crops to people, biofortified food to people was something that's actually very challenging. So we had to do a lot of advocacy, we had to do a lot of seminar, we had to do a lot of giveaway, we had to do a lot of um, farmers training, because one of the things that will make us sustainable in the biofortified value chain is to make farmers buy into what you do, so that we could have raw materials throughout the year. So that was what we did. We did a lot of trainings for farmers just to give them free seedlings to cultivate, and so that we also gave them market. So as they're cultivating, they also selling back to us. So the guarantee market even will tell you to cultivate. So we had to do a lot of that sensitization trainings and all that for other processors, so that people could actually have understanding of what biofortified crops or biofortified food is all about. Then another challenge that we had was regulatory bodies. Um, you know, when you talk about biofortified food or biofortified crops, it's like doing a lot of how will I call it now? Food testing all over again. Like apart from the one they already know. So they have to test for the micronutrients, the major micronutrients that you're talking about, and all those things, just to make sure that your food um contains the major micronutrient that you say your food contains. So we had a lot of back and forth with regulatory bodies, especially NAFDAC. But now that they have understanding of what biofortification is all about, so it makes it easier for us, and yeah, majorly. So just along the line, let me just cut it short. Human resource is one of the major challenge that we had, which yeah, we've been able to overcome. Raw materials issues, and that is one of the reasons why we had to talk to the farmers, give them planting materials free of charge, and that for the first year. And you know, when you plant cassava for the first year, let's say you plant 1 acre of cassava, by the second year, you'll be having a planting material for 10 acres. So giving them a planting material for the first year, so it makes it easy for them to expand in the second year. So the raw materials issue was sorted with that sensitization, as also doing a lot of training for the farmers and regulatory bodies. Now they have understanding of what it is, so it's quite easy for us.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I have a question for Mr. What do other stakeholders, government, society to collective ambition and solution, SDG, zero and poverty?
Yeah, like I said. Sorry. Yeah, like I said, one of the problems that we faced was enabling environment. And I think one of the ways at which we could solve the problem of creating enabling environment, not just for our own business, but for agri agri-related business or agri businesses as a whole is going to be PPP, private-public partnerships. You understand that government on its own cannot provide all the infrastructure, all the resources that is required to create the enabling environment. It has to be a partnership between the private sector, civil societies, and the government, like putting in favorable policies in place to ensure that there's easy access to forex, easy exchange rates. For us, we are bringing in investments from diaspora down to Nigeria. We are increasing the foreign currency in available, or the forex available in Nigeria here. So in that regard, and the government also needs to play a role in ensuring that as much as forex is coming in, there needs to be a way at which our people can get their funds out. And we are giving that drive in that regard. It's already enough that we are facing the challenge of brand trust. I mean, it's enough that we are facing the challenge of brand trust in abroad to get their funds in here. They only trust us when they start seeing the process, when they are purchasing their farmlands, we send them their land documents via courier. They also get the soft copy. They get the land map out via the survey. They have access to current updates on their farms. So this brand trust is built over the years that we have been in business. Now it's now left to the government to put favorable policies in place to ensure that we keep up this enabling environment for businesses that are trying. And you also come that gives private businesses tax breaks that builds infrastructures in rural communities, like the communication networks, building masts in rural communities can be given tax breaks or reduction in tax in that regard, because they have invested heavily in an infrastructure in the rural community that they might not really earn or get a return on their investment back. So that tax break would also help them as an incentive for what they have done in that regard. That's as regards for government. And I think the role of civil society is also to ensure that people have the access to right information, to right knowledge, and also to improve the growth of the agribusiness sector. One of the places where we have been lacking as a country to build a more resilient food system is as regards of agricultural innovation education. So you discovered that if you go back to rural communities, things have always been done the exact same way they've been done in about centuries ago, which they are not so much evolving in that regard. There is not so much mindset change, which is causing some of the problems that Abajide is facing. That mindset shift is, I think, some of the civil societies can play the role of educating those in rural communities as regards the innovation in agriculture, and also that mindset shift to ensure that once new solutions are coming into rural communities, they are not more receptive they are more receptive to those innovations in that regard. So in a nutshell, I think a private-public partnership is going to do the deal for improving and enabling the environment. And for private sector, there are lots of investments in rural communities, like the Yorubas will say, it permits me to speak in Yoruba at this time. Yorubas will say, so there are some investments that could be made in rural communities and in agriculture.
I'm sorry.
Okay. It means that there's when I mean Inugbeluwa, it means that money is in the bush. That's the meaning it is. That's what it means. Money is in the bush. That's where there is not so much development, or where there are lots of problems where there is money. So in this regard, some of the problems we are facing at rural communities is broken logistics. You agree with me that if you go to rural communities, the vehicles they use in transporting food item or produce from the farm down to the market are really broken vehicles that on its own is a problem for the produce that is being transported on its own. So you can predict that during the process of this transition or this transportation, that there's something that is going to happen on the way and the produce is not going to make it to the market. So in this regard, there is a lot of opportunity in improving the efficiency of the logistics in rural communities to bringing out produce to urban cities. And I think these are some of the places private sector could also improve on and also come into play in this regard. Yeah, thank
you. Okay, so you talk about one about policies on quality control. In case I want to add value to an agriculture, I want to export. What do you think the government encourage someone like me?
Is that question for me or for Tinuke? Yeah. Okay, perfect. So for to ensure that there are policies in place to encourage people like you want to come into agriculture and also export goods outside Nigeria, I think there are lots of bodies currently that provide that guidance. We have NAFDAC, which provides that guidance in terms of certifying foods which are really healthy for the human living. We also have SON, Standard Organization of Nigeria, to provide that standard that you require. And I also think there are lots of things that we have not been putting into perspective to encourage people like you. While I was my research in agriculture, I discovered that when you go into these research institutes like the Nigerian Institute for Oil Palm Research, like the Cocoa Research Institute, like IIT, there are lots of research that has been that has been carried out by this institution, which has been funded by the government. And the result of this research, there are lots of products that has come out of this research that people like you can go there and commercialize. I was at Nigerian Institute for Oil Palm Research a couple of years ago. They have this palm wine that doesn't ferment. They found a solution, a way to reduce or to stop the fermentation of palm wine, that you can now preserve palm wine on the shelf. And it can last it has about a year shelf life in that regard. However, they are only a research institution. They are not a commercialized, they are not private sector. It's for people like you and people like me to go into that research institution, look at the research that has been carried out, and try to adopt or try to commercialize their solutions in that regard. In Cocoa Research Institute, like as an example, they have developed cocoa gari, whereby gari is mixed with cocoa in that regard. So you drink gari like you are drinking gari and probably your choco or your Milo in that regard. It's a very fine solution. However, like I said, they are still a research institution. They are not meant for commercialization. It is up to us to go there and go and commercialize some of the research that they have carried out in that regard. And to also mention, they also make very good chocolate. But you don't see it outside because they are only a research institution. So I think for government has been putting some funds. I wouldn't say it's enough yet, but they have been putting some funds into research to help also develop the sector of value addition that people like you or people like me can always go there to adopt. And these are very good policies to also put funds into research in that regard. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Users why?
I mean, it's a pretty much straightforward response. Everyone is doing their thing the way they know it and how they like it. But for us to really unlock that good mind in the agriculture sector, as a country, as a continent, we need to really explore collaborative engagements, right? I mean, we talk about a lot of lapses across the value chain from production, talk about bad roads, talk about lack of this, lack of that. I mean, the problems are always there, right? And the problems they don't look like they'll be off by tomorrow. And this is why producers, farmers, I mean, it's not even limited to producers and farmers alone. Players in the value chain must come together. We've been saying it, yeah, some are working together, but they must genuinely come together, right? To to build collaborative infrastructure to address these problems. So let me give you a practical example on how this is very important. So for Eco22 Hub, for example, so let's say we have like a cluster of farmers or cluster of producers for different perishables, and that they have this really strong synergy of working together, and that we want to set up, and that they've identified the need for cold storage. That kind of setup, that kind of cluster makes our work a lot easier, right? For us to set up systems because it's easy for us to measure what their collective output looks like. It's easy for us to understand what their storage pattern looks like. It's easy for us to also look at what it means as regards return on investment. If we set up an eco-2 of a particular size or capacity in a particular cluster, how do we, or how much time do we need to recoup back the investment on it? Remember that in cases where they don't have to pay outrightly for them to have access to such solution, that they would be paying on a pay-as-you-store basis. So it's easy for us. We've seen a lot of cases where they feel like, oh, I don't want to share stuff with that guy over there. No, I don't want to this. I mean, we've seen a lot of cases like that, and we can't just come in to help them just if they are not willing to build a bridge among themselves, right? If they are not willing to work together among themselves, I mean, it would be a other task for us to want to bring them together. You get what I'm saying? And this also has ripple effect on setting up other infrastructures that is required for everyone, every player in the value chain for them to do business in a convenient way and everybody make viable return at the end of it. So again, producers, farmers, marketers, distributors, private sector generally, government, the civil society organization, everyone needs to work in a collaborative way. And we need to work in the true sense of it, not just saying we are collaborating or we are partnering and we can't really see the impact of that at every length of it. So everyone needs to come together to build collaborative engagement. And that way we can unlock the actual good mind in the agriculture sector. That way you don't have to even, so as a producer, you don't have to worry about cold storage, right? You don't have to worry about transportation because there is also another leg of that collaboration that provides that. That leg of that collaboration is also ensured that, okay, from the producer side, I'm guaranteed of continuous supply or I'm guaranteed of continuous harvest. If this cluster does not harvest today, this cluster will harvest tomorrow. Then that makes economic sense for me to set up an Eco-2 hub as big as this or as big as that in this hub, knowing that there would definitely be usage for such facility in that regard. And same for the seed that you want to distribute, maybe you want to transport from one point, from your production point to your storage point, from your storage point to the market point, from the market point to the doorstep of final consumers. And yeah, so in a nutshell, we all need to genuinely come together to work in a collaborative manner to unlock the good mind.
All right, okay, thank you. I have a question. It says, what are in the agriculture play a role? Who would like to answer that?
What is what?
Sorry, get the question well.
In the question, what are the different things which space can play a role in cost?
Sorry, did you get the
Different values
question? Oh,
that
okay,
the
okay,
youth
different value.
at a low cost, it won't cost them space in their.
I mean, the value chains are there. When you pick your pen and paper, try to, I mean, from your typical standpoint, yes, you are not a professional in the agriculture space. What does the process like? What does the process look like for food production? I mean, maybe some harvest on their farm and they just bring home and they eat, right? But for most of us in urban areas, we typically would go to the market to buy most of these things, go to the supermarket, go to the open market to buy most of these food items that we consume. And I'm sure many of us agree that those food items are not produced on the farm or on the market where we purchase them from. So it's definitely coming from somewhere. And for you to bring it from somewhere, I mean, like the farmer did not just fling it from Kano and it lands somewhere in Ikeja or somewhere in Lekki and then you just pick it up from there. So a system definitely moved it from the point where it was produced till it was able to get to the market. Someone picks it up from the market, gets it ready for you as or as maybe customer. You come to the market, you buy off, take to your house, you process, then food is ready, right? So across all of these points speaks to the value chain. I mean, there are some businesses that are coming up, and what their own value proposition is that they want to take off the stress. They want to take the stress off people. I mean, people that don't have time, or they can't go through the stress of going to the market to buy perishable items, right? So they want to take that stress off people, busy professionals. That's one leg. I mean, you typically, maybe you are used to jumping on bike or getting into your car, going to the market to buy XYZ. But it's a challenge for some people. They don't have that time. They don't have that strength. They want to put their time and energy into other very productive things. And so that makes sense to the fact that they see companies or businesses or individuals that are now helping people to do that. And then they go just pay them to do whatever they want to do. And that's it. We also have from the point of production, even before production starts, start from farm inputs, right? Start from getting the whole production process, getting the process ready. Talk about fertilizer, talk about the seedlings, talk about this, talk about that. And so it just paints a picture of what that value chain looks like. It's very enormous. Talk about transportation, talk about preservation, talk about processing, talk about distribution. I mean, there are people that they don't produce, they don't distribute, they just collect. They collect, package, sell. Maybe they've already identified their market segment, right? They collect, package in a way that makes sense, or that appeals to their market segment, and they sell to them, and they're able to get monetary value back in a way that makes sense to both parties, and they continue the cycle again and again. So for anyone answering this question, you just need to sit back, try to understand what the value chain for food production looks, for food from production to consumption state, what it looks like, right? Yeah, you might not have enough knowledge, and the internet is there to help out. I mean, individuals who are there, people like us are there to reach out to say, okay, I want to inquire more about this. But I'm sure you can get most of the information online. Google is everyone's friend now. To understand the value chain. Then from there, you can now identify, okay, maybe where the low-hanging fruit lies for you to start, or maybe for the skills that you have, or for the capabilities that you have, or for the resources or the network that you currently have, where can you start from? I mean, just have to start. Then when you start, you gradually understand the value chain, even in a more practical sense. Then you now start better positioning yourself and your business in a way that better captures value across the value chain. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does. It does help. I actually, how can technology transform system both in and global technology transform system both and globally?
Yeah, I mean, technology is a means to an end itself. It's not the whole thing. It's just a driver to improve the services or the existing production that is already taking place in agriculture. So we've seen lots of technological drive in agriculture. You can segment them into like 5 or 6, if I may recall. You have market access, you have financial services, you have advisory services, you have input production, input provision, and you also have I would remember as time goes on anyways. So for us, we play in the financial services and market access service in this regard. Now, for what we do at Farm Ignite, we are bringing in working professionals that are in diaspora who have funds readily available and who have the interest in agriculture to come down to Nigeria and come and own farms. Is that right? So, but they can't come down physically because they have a 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. job. So we use that technology to bridge that gap to ensure that they are able to still own farms here in Nigeria. We connect them to fertile farmlands where they can buy those farmlands, get their documentation via e-copy, and the hard copy is courier to them. And they can also, from that, they can now start developing that farmland with the crop of their choice, or the farm of their choice. They can start with that. And our own field officers will help them cultivate that farm, sending reports back to them via videos, pictures, and messages, right, on their mobile phones. in this regard. They are able to see how their farm is doing and see what's happening on their farm as activities is being carried out on their farms in that regard. And we now connect those produce to the market again. We have ready-made markets for those produce that we connect those produce to in that regard. So as a whole, without being involved, they are being involved in that regard. So they are able to play in agricultural value chain without getting their hands dirty, because we include technological drive to improve the whole system and to ensure that it's more effective and efficient for them to play in, right? So for smallholder farmers and for those in rural youth, rural communities, we are providing them with financial with finance to live a sustainable life. Thereby, we are playing a financial services role to ensure that they are able to earn from the farm in that regard, giving them access to what they wouldn't have had access to, which is jobs in rural community initially, and they're able to have access to that in that regard. So I think building a resilient and a more resilient food system in Nigeria and Africa, globally as a whole, there is the role of technological drive plays in ensuring that the food system is more resilient. When you move into, when you move into market access, and you see lots of e-commerce platform aggregating products and from smallholder farmers connecting them to off-takers. That's one technological drive that youth can also play in, because as you can see, some of the problems our budget is also trying to solve is post-harvest loss. There can't be enough of this because there is still so much loss going on in the agricultural sector in Nigeria and even globally. So we need more players to come into these sectors and use technological drive to improve the problems that smallholder farmers are facing in this regard. And when you move down to information service, one of the things that has hampered the growth of smallholder farmers in Nigeria and in Africa as a whole is lack of improvement on good agronomic practices. And how can they do this? How can you improve their agronomic practices? Is by giving them the right information on the current agronomic practice that is being undertaken for different crops, and to ensure that they have access to the right information and the right access to the right machineries that can help them improve their agronomic practices. And this can only be done majorly to reach at scale via the use of technology, whereby you can reach smallholder farmers on their phone and tell them what to do as their cultivation of their crop in that regard, how to maintain their crop, when to maintain their crop, and what to do in situations whereby they need advisory service from a professional to ensure that they're able to curb the advent of pests and diseases on their crop. So I think information service as regards also plays a huge role in ensuring that farmers can improve their yield and they can improve on their good agronomic practices. And this can be done with the use of technology. So technological drive as a whole plays a huge role in the African context for the improvement of the agricultural sector. And for me, I would say it's still at its infancy, because from about 90 million smallholder farmers that we have in sub-Saharan Africa, only about 3 million are connected to form of technological. So we still have a setback of about 57 million. So there is still a huge chunk of the market which hasn't even been captured till date. And why is this? Maybe it might be as a result of lack of infrastructure, which we've been trying to discuss and trying to see how possible we can address in one way or the other with our own intervention as well. And some of these, as a result, has hampered the usage of these services or these technological services by smallholder farmers. So there is still a huge market for youth to also come and play in any of these various solutions as regards advisory or information service, as regards market access or financial services, or as regards logistics in that regard. So the technological drive is the way to go to ensure that we're able to create a more efficient and effective and resilient food system in Africa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toy. And so you talked about information and also giving us time to farm present physically. These are use technology. question. So what's the game changer? What do you think? What do you think that in trans world?
So I guess that question is for me, right?
It's for both of you, but you can.
Okay. So I mean, how I am transforming the food system and the world by extension. How ecosystem is doing that is that by we are democratizing access to cold storage for businesses that typically cannot afford the available alternatives. So we are democratizing that for them, and we are very much intentional about it. It's something that we'll keep improving on to ensure that we get more businesses to focus on their core business activities, whilst Ecosys to take care of all their coaching needs end to end. The vision is big. We want to be that go-to coaching partner right from the point of production till you deliver your food to the doorstep of your customers and your consumers. I want to do this across the African continent. Um, yes, so this is how we are transforming the food system. We understand that for us to also be able to achieve this at scale, technology will play a very, very important role. And we are not leaving that out from our daily operations as we get to provide these services, grow it and scale it across board.
Thank you. That's good. How about Mr. Shoiba?
For us, the game changer is hello. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, for us at Farm Ignite, the game changer is bringing working professionals who usually would not participate in agriculture, giving them the ability to now come and be involved without being involved in agriculture with the use of technology. Now, what we are bringing to change the system or the food system to make it more resilient is to ensure that everybody can play a role in feeding the African continent, which is going to reach about 2 billion by the year 2050. We need every hands on deck to ensure that we are able to feed the population as the time arrives. Now, we are doing this by bringing all hands on deck, working professionals who are still at their job, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. job, giving them the ability to start a farm and to ensure that the farm is running successfully while they are still at their work, and giving them that peace of mind that their farm is running effectively with the use of our technology that allows them to monitor their farm activities as activities are being carried out. So for us, transforming the food system has been the use of our technology to drive a more inclusive drive in agriculture to ensure that anybody at any time, regardless of your lack of knowledge, your lack of time, your lack of access to adequate resources, you can start your personal farm, you can own your personal farm, and you can also get passive income from agriculture with the help of Farm Ignite. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much. That's a very help improve agriculture. It's very just like a so now. Okay, so for joining. So this webinar that's sector in agriculture, value chain addition, technology, your research to find what sector you want to be a part of. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. We love to have you.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.